We now return to Illinois Rising, presented by the Illinois Policy Institute, the radio show discussing the honest truth about Illinois policy and politics. Here's AM 560's Dan Proft.
Dan Proft back with John Tillman, President and CEO of the Illinois Policy Institute. And John, against the backdrop of the bankrupt CPS and proposal by Governor Rauner to essentially foster a state takeover of CPS, since they can't seem to manage their finances or educate children, two kind of important things.
But they do employ teachers and pay them well with excellent benefits and retirement programs.
They do, and they also want to crowd out competition in that space. Charter schools have been a positive innovation to provide more competition, more choice for families in Chicago and elsewhere, but in particular in Chicago where choice is so desperately needed. And yet what the teachers union want and what Rahm Emanuel and other politicos in Chicago seem to be willing to deal is to cap charter schools. It's a very curious thing because on the one hand, there seems to be agreement outside of the teachers union that charter schools were a positive innovation, as I described. And so we want to limit the number of those.
Right. You want to cap the children's potential to do better. They agree that charter schools are a better option for some kids, maybe not all kids, but some kids. And now we want to limit that. What a bizarre thought. But
right.
It's all about it's really a chit in the negotiations with the union. It has nothing to do with the children.
Well, we don't want to, to kind of satiate ourselves with too much goodness in Illinois.
Because we have so much already.
That's right. You got to limit that. Small doses. State Representative Barb Wheeler, Republican from McHenry County, has introduced legislation to lift the cap on charter schools in Illinois. And she joins us now. Barb, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Oh, great to be with you, Dan. It's always a pleasure.
So, kind of unpack the legislation that you've introduced and the impetus for introducing it.
Well, I'm a big fan of charter schools. I think they do a tremendous job throughout the state, but specifically in Chicago, in areas where families need access to high-quality schools. And I'm a big believer in competition. So this sort of arbitrary number that the state has in regard to the cap of 120 statewide charters, basically the bill, which is not a new bill, it's been introduced and reintroduced, and I'm introducing it this year, is to remove the cap throughout the state.
Barb, John Tillman here, and thanks for introducing. Hi, how you doing? Thanks for introducing that bill. It has been around for a while. Maybe with a governor advocating for this, we can see a little bit more traction. In the past, these kinds of pieces of legislation have gotten bipartisan support. And what I think is interesting about this is you live out in the bucolic suburbs, and yet you're trying to lift the cap, not just for statewide, but would have the biggest impact in the city of Chicago. Tell people why you care about that, why it's important to you.
Well, thank you again for having me on today. And Dan and John, I know that you know that I'm a former teacher. I think that being able to provide the best quality education for students is my number one priority as a state rep. I've done tours of charter schools. I'm a big fan of school choice. I'm a big fan of homeschooling. And being able to provide everyone throughout the state with all of their options and the best options for the students is a priority. So, I think the charter school, getting rid of the charter school cap in the state of Illinois always comes up when they're negotiating the union contracts, especially in the city. So the time on this bill is good to restart the conversation. And you're right. Governor Rauner is a big fan of charter schools. He's a big fan of education for all students and providing the best opportunities for them. That's without a doubt.
But
I got to give the new director, Tony Smith, of K through 12 education, a lot of credit, too. It's really important to him to create autonomy within the classroom and be innovative, too. And it goes along with what the charter schools are trying to do as well.
As a former teacher, and I'm sure that you must have, whether you wanted to or not, have been a member of the Illinois Education Association, of course, in Chicago. It's the Chicago Teachers Union. The unions have come out strongly against this legislation in the past. They will again, and every chance they get, they oppose any kind of expansion of choice for parents for better educational outcomes. Since you were once a teacher and part of that union, what can you tell people to help them understand why the teachers' representative of the union is always so in opposition to legislation that would actually improve children's educational outcomes?
It's interesting. I often think about that. The stuff that individual teachers in the classroom want to do is to be innovative, not be mandated by the state, and this is exactly what you do. They really push back on so much state testing, that's mandated by the state. They really want, the magic word is autonomy, which is, quite honestly, if you were to ask them individually how they feel in regard to the overall and overarching ideas of charter schools and choice, I think that if they were to drill down and think about it, they would be more in agreement with individual schools being able to have some more freedom, especially within their own classroom. Having said that, though, they're members of a larger and very strong lobbyist group that has a lot of pull and very powerful in the state of Illinois. And I often wonder whether the IEA is more concerned about growing their numbers in their membership than really representing their members' true intentions as they, close the door and teach in their own classroom. I do believe that is oftentimes polarizing issues.
She is State Representative Barb Wheeler, Republican from Crystal Lake. Representative Wheeler, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
And it's interesting, too, so that to Barb's point about the teachers, so on the one hand, they say, well, it's not fair because charter schools don't have all these mandates that they have to comply with like we do. Okay, so instead of saying, well, why don't we remove the mandates on everybody and give everybody the latitude and the flexibility, they say, no, make their situation worse, just like it is for me, rather than making everybody's situation better.
I once, years ago, on Craig Delamore's show on another station, debated the chief education officer for the city of Chicago, and this is exactly how it played out. I said, why? I said to her, why are charter schools performing almost at the same level as suburban and downstate schools with the same kids in the city because these kids are taken by lottery. They're not selectively enrolled. And she said, well, because the charter schools don't have to operate under the collective bargaining agreement. And so then I said, why don't we charterize the entire system? And of course, she had a meltdown.
Right, there you go. For more on this topic from kind of an association global perspective, we're now joined by Jelani McEwen. He's the External Relations Director for the Illinois Network of Charter Schools. Jelani, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Dan.
So kind of give people a sense of the state of play with charter schools. One of the things that's often argued by Karen Lewis and other teachers union hefes is that, look, a lot of the charter schools are not outperforming their neighborhood schools. It's a mixed bag. And so this is why we shouldn't be divesting from the local school and funding these charter schools.
Well, I can say, we know that to not be true, 100% false. Inc. recently did an analysis of student enrollment patterns in Chicago. And so what we did was we took every charter school and we looked at their student and determined where that student would have gone to school if they followed the zoning pattern, right? If they went to the school based upon their home address, where would they have gone? And so we took all the students' schools that they should have gone to and kind of created an average on the CPS, on Chicago Public Schools School Quality Rating Policy metric. We took an average of that, and then we compared that average for all of their school they should have gone to the quality of the school they're in. And in Chicago, 72% of charter schools were performing at a higher level than the average of the school the students otherwise would have been zoned to.
I think, Jelani, John Tillman here. I think one of the things that you have done, your organization and charter schools in general have done a great job in just a moral, righteous storyline that we need to get out, which is Chicago kids can compete. Chicago kids can perform when the educational system is responsive to their individual needs, and that's what the charter schools do. Completely
true. I think that's one of the biggest issues I struggle with the union rhetoric. Sometimes what they argue is that because the communities and the young people that are in the schools, come from a vulnerable, low-income background, that those are the hurdles that prevent them from learning, and they're not accountable for those outcomes. But that's not true. We have proof points across Chicago of charter schools that are serving low-income kids, that are serving low-income communities, and they're growing and they're learning. Poverty is not a bar that prevents people from learning, right? We know now that a school culture that is supportive, that believes in the kids, that a curriculum that is prepared to meet the personalized needs of each learner, and a management structure that can manage themselves well, those are levers for change that can help all children learn, especially our most vulnerable kids.
Now, one of the other arguments that's advanced is, and this is against private schools as well, but also charters, is that the difference between these competitive options is that they don't have to take all comers where the local schools do.
That's not true either. Charter schools are open enrollment schools. Any student in the city of Chicago can apply to these schools And if they are picked through the lottery, right, it's randomized because if there's more seats in the building, if there's more students who want a seat in the building than there are seats, there's a lottery. But we have to take anybody who comes. We have to help whoever comes through the doors, whether we have the resources to or not. So that's a common misconception. And we don't get a choice in who comes in the building. We're not selective. Yeah, we take whoever wants us.
And I suppose the fact that there's more demand than supply says something about the state of affairs.
Oversubscribed, yes.
Totally true. Totally true.
All right. He is Jelani McEwen, External Relations Director for the Illinois Network of Charter Schools. Jelani, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it.